So what if I told you that I was sad, that I'm anxious, that my partner lost her job, that I'm going through a divorce? What if I told you that I worry every day about my child, that my mother is dying, that I was just diagnosed with diabetes, cancer, or hypertension? What if I told you that I'm not sleeping well, that I'm addicted to drugs, that I'm stressed out about work all the time? What if I told you that I don't make a difference anywhere in the world, that I'm burned out, that I'm in an abusive relationship, or that I'm simply angry all the time? Would you help me? Would you help me? Good afternoon, everyone. We are here to talk about mental health and well-being, and specifically, we're asking Black men to speak up. If you think about it, we're celebrating Black History Month. And a lot has happened over the course of our lives, over the course of the past 2 years, as we are experiencing and enduring COVID, as people are talking about having an endemic. And we're scared because there doesn't appear to be an end in sight. The reality of the situation is those things that I just mentioned, Black men experience day in and day out. And the question that they're constantly asking, will you help us? Will you help us? Today we have two dynamic brothers who are going to help us to navigate a series of questions. We want your questions in real time. So if you will go to the chat box and put your questions in the chat box, and I'm asking and moderating and asking them questions, you too will have your questions answered. We don't want you to hold them until the end. We want you to put them out there in real time, and we're going to go with it and go with the flow. Brief introduction of these two amazing young men that you're about to hear from. The first person on our panel is Jack Brown. Jack is an Army veteran with 7 years of peer support specialist experience. He currently leads a peer-ran organization called Peer-to-Peer Whole Wellness. Jack is also a certified MHPS, RSPS, and newly certified RPS, as well as a RAP, which stands for Wellness Recovery Action Plan Facilitator. Jack has an Associate's in Science Mental Health and an Associate's in Science Mental Health Substance Abuse Counseling, and is a strong advocate for peers providers across Texas. Jack has gathered a number of tools through various trainings to support his ability to now live a life that includes self-care and advocacy. Jack is often called upon to speak his truth relative to substance abuse challenges, mental health challenges, and recovery from incarceration. He uses his past to shine a light for others' future. Jack believes that living a life in recovery and modeling healing behavior is the key to ultimate freedom. Welcome, Mr. Jack Brown.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kevin.
Mr. Train Grant is a father, mentor, life coach, entrepreneur, author, and motivational public speaker that teaches people the importance of perseverance by speaking his truth about how he overcame the tragedies he was born into, such as abandonment, physical, verbal, and mental abuse. Born and raised in Dallas, Texas, Train knew at an early age that despite what happened to him, he was responsible for his future. Growing up in the heart of South Dallas, a lot of his peers were taken over and under by drugs, gangs, prison, and even death. Train was determined to find a positive way out of what he considers to have been a generational curse. He graduated from Lincoln High School and was awarded a football scholarship to Wesleyan College in Iowa, and then later transferred to Paul Quinn College. In 2019, Trained to Heal Charms. Trained to Heal Charms are exotic handmade bracelets for both men and women that are captivating to the eyes, but also have healing power. It protects and balances the soul. Many hats, as you will hear, but he is first a father of four, as well a father figure and mentor to the youth and adults in his community. He has made it his life's mission to educate and mentor those who come from a background of brokenness, hopelessness, abuse, and disparity. Welcome, Mr. Big Train.
How y'all doing? Glad to meet you guys, man. Thank you for that, Dr. Kelly.
Ladies, gentlemen, when I tell you you are in for a treat and you're about to hear from two dynamic brothers, I am so excited to be serving as the moderator for this panel. But what you're about to experience is going to be transformative. It's going to be innovative, creative. You're going to leave here, I should say, motivated to go and to find your voice and to speak your truth. So Jack and Train, my first question is, why do you feel that men of color have a problem with acknowledging first and foremost that mental health is a real thing? That they are even experiencing mental health challenges?
You want to go first, Train?
Oh, I go first. One of the biggest things that you can begin to see is where mental health is majority described to be at. It's not really looked at as being an overall thing, it's looked at as something that we all deal with, but it's kind of more geographically placed. And this is something that's done within medicine or anything like that in order to be able to control masses or mindsets in order to be able to get production of masses. So when you have Black men and you look at the fact that the percentages of Black men in America is already low. You have, it's about 12% Blacks that make up America. This is not even considering the fact that you're looking at Blacks that are considered to be Black Americans or Africans that are here at this time. It's just all generalized as being one percentage. But we understand that that percentage does not make a true ratio when it comes down to mental health being described. And when you look at it as being described, it's more being described in geographical settings where there are poverty or low income areas of people that's going through things. When you're looking at going through your images in front of you or being so torn up, how can you look at yourself as being torn up? When you're going through life and you're looking at the things around you to say that I'm trying to survive rather than I'm living in, how can you look at yourself? How can you even fathom that it's really you who have a problem? These are just some ways that even just to take just a small split, just to look at it from one dynamic.
Well said, thank you. Again, someone has their television or a radio or something is on. So if you have something on in the background, I'm going to ask you to mute it or turn it off. Mr. Brown.
Look, that's a hard one to follow. Well said, Train. For me, I feel like men of color never can actually acknowledge mental health is because we're not educated to it. It's never spoken about, right? So like for me, quick story. So my stepmom was an alcoholic, right? And so, you know, those were things that I were taught that you never spoke about outside of the house, right? You don't talk about what's going on, you know, what's in the house stays in the house, basically, right? And so my stepmom was an alcoholic and I was like 9 years old. And I remember one night she was driving us home and she just pulled over and she told me to drive. And I'm looking at her like, hey, lady, what do you mean drive this car? I'm like 9, right? You know, and so I did what I had to do and I drove the car home. Well, at 9, because I wasn't educated to mental health or trauma or anything. I didn't even know that was going to be a thing for me later on down the road, right? I didn't even know that that was going to cause some emotional trauma later on to where I need to actually do some self-healing and talk to someone about it again. That's like, hey, we never talk about that. And so to deal with it, right? I just made a joke of it, like as I became an adult, I just kind of told people, hey man, I've been driving since I was 9 years old, right? Just kind of be, in the midst of a conversation or trying to be popular, right? But, in all honesty, it wasn't until I was like 40 when I started like working on self where I realized that, hey man, I was really kind of like emotionally scarred from that said event. So I don't know if that answered the question, but I always like try to give an example because that's just a baseline for me, really, so people can identify.
No, I think that was an excellent answer. And you both are very transparent, which I'm going to call you both unicorns. I think the reality of the situation is people are going to hear from Black men, men of color today that are willing to share and tell their stories. Why is it that you believe that so many men of color, or men in particular, suppress or don't talk about their past traumas?
It's to me, it's almost I look at it as when you walk outside in the daytime, you can naturally see, right? And you can walk. But if you walk outside in the nighttime, you can naturally see and you can walk. So you begin to go through life really not making a difference in the comparison because you can naturally see, but not really realizing that even in the daytime, you're still acting as though you're walking in dark. You're missing some things. You're not able to see some things. And when this becomes a pattern of life, then this is just, I can see, even though that I'm not naturally being able to see it all. And that's including myself. So you have to be able to have a complete balance within yourself, which is what mental health actually is. It means that they're trying to say something is chemically imbalanced. But it's not so much that we're chemically imbalanced, it's that we're self-unknowingly imbalanced. We're unbalanced within our energy, within ourselves, not to even be able to accept what masculinity is or feminine energy is, even within a man or even a woman, except within herself. This is the same difference between day and night. But when you begin to have such an imbalance of one nature, then and you begin to live in this nature, whether you're suffering, you still seem to feel as you're thriving in this nature. It becomes your habitat. How can I consider myself as one that's going through mental health if now this is my awareness of knowing? This is one of the biggest problems, is that we deal with identity crisis not to be able to see ourselves, to admit it.
Wow, thank you for that. Again, we don't want you to be shy. We want to hear from you and want to answer your questions in real time. So if you do have a question or a comment, please put those in the chat box and I will definitely acknowledge those. Jack, same question for you.
For me, it's a cultural norm, as a man of color, I'm taught at an early age to stuff and suppress my feelings. Like, you fall down, scrape your knee, and the first thing they say, hey, men don't cry, and so I went to the army, and you fall down, you hurt yourself, and you get up, and they like, hey, shake it off, keep it going, and I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm not supposed to be. I've been groomed to not feel any pain, right? Or at least to numb myself to pain, right? And so all along, I'm not knowing that I'm suppressing basic childhood traumas, things of that nature. It's never discussed. I'm not given the verbiage to discuss it. My brain says when I hear the word trauma, it automatically goes to something physical, right? Mental health is like last on the list. Like, I didn't know there was different versions of trauma to later on in life, right? So I just feel like men of color suppress it because, one, we don't know how to verbalize it, and two, we've been groomed to like be numb to feelings and emotions and not identify them.
You know, the barbershop is generally a place where Black men can go to on the Saturdays during the week and really have candid conversations. Do you feel like we don't have enough safe spaces for us to talk about our issues and challenges? Is that a major part of the problem? Women can collectively come together anywhere. They can get on the phone and they can talk about, you know, women can talk about it all. They can talk about the kind of underwear they're wearing. Men, we don't have that capacity to be that open and transparent with each other, but you can go to the barbershop right now and hear brothers talk about pressure, talk about challenges that they're experiencing, and be very open. How do we create more safe yet brave spaces for Black men to enter and to have those conversations where the healing can begin?
I know for me, go ahead, Train.
I would say it kind of already has begun, but it's a lot of things is in the dark, it's hidden. And one of the main reasons why it's hidden because men takes on a persona of what a man's supposed to look like. One of the biggest reasons why men do this is because I call it a lack of mentoring. We have people want to be teachers, coaches. We have people that want to be mothers and fathers, and they want to take on all these names, but they begin to miss the actual the alignment that happens in the properness of something when you raise a child, and it's adults who raise a child, and the reason why is because the adult has the information that the child does not have. It's able to guide this child and allow it to know that these are places that you can miss the errors because I already know, so I'm here to guide you in order to teach you to raise you up properly, right? But then when that child goes over into adulthood, whether it be womanhood or manhood, one thing that lacks within manhood is that a man does not take the man and takes him on a man tour into manhood, that he's understand manhood and how it should be for him. So this is something that he begins to take on his own perception of what it's supposed to be to look like a man, and then takes on the perception of society and what society say that a man is supposed to be. Doesn't know himself. He doesn't know what it means to be a man. He doesn't understand that he's still supposed to know his principle, but still his emotions are at the same time.
Mm.
You know, Dr. Kelly, for me, the barbershop is a safe place because that's the one place I can think of I can go to and lean on the knowledge of the elders or the old heads, as we will call them, and actually say, I don't know something, right? You know, one of the hardest things for a man of color to ever admit is to say that he don't know. I mean, I'm guilty of it myself. I might have some knowledge of some things, bare minimum knowledge, right? And I can put on a song and dance and make you believe that I'm an expert in that arena because of images, because I want to portray myself as a man. And, you know, men are supposed to be born protectors and providers, right? And so how can I be a protector and a provider and I don't know certain things? Well, one, I've never been taught them. That's why I don't know them, and it doesn't make me less than a man to say that I don't know if I'm still willing to learn.
We have ourselves so divided. Even when you look at barbershops, you have to think about it. Most people go to a barbershop that really fits their age bracket, just like if you go out to a social gathering or whatnot, right? So you have a lot of younger people, you know, attending to younger people. You have a lot of middle-aged people that's dealing with the middle-aged class, and a lot of older people dealing with the older class. You know, just to be honest, it's really not like coming to America was when you seen Hakeem and them going to the barbershop and Arsenio O'Hara eating you know, spinach. You know, like that is the way that it should be. We should be able to have a structure to where the elders are able to talk to men, and men are able to talk to young boys and have that structure. But this structure is something that has been broken down within the Black community, within the Black race.
Guys, I just want to point out we're getting a lot of good questions and comments in the chat box. Both Stefan and Felicia said that we're socialized, men are conditioned to be this way, so they totally agree with what you're saying about how we're being raised as men. You know, all men have this thing, especially Black men are taught about this man box very early on in life. You don't cry, you don't show feelings and emotions. You're taught about how you treat women, how you view women, how you look at women. My question before I get to some of the other questions in here, when we are talking about how we view and treat our women, can you speak to the term toxic masculinity? Because that is definitely a part of the mental health culture that Black men are experiencing in America. So what are your thoughts on toxic masculinity?
So for me, all right, transparent moment. So growing up in my neighborhood, it was rough, right? And so to be honest, you know, a lot of people, or myself, not a lot of people, we looked up to the players and the pimps and the gangsters and things of that nature. Those were my role models. And so how they treated women is how I thought women were supposed to be treated, right? And not so much in a physical sense, right? You know what I'm saying? But maybe in a monetary sense. You know, growing up, I had a 2-parent household, but my father was never there because he worked all the time. And so he primarily just showered my mom with gifts all the time. And I thought that's what a man is supposed to do. Right. You know, and so I took a little bit of that and I took a little bit of what I seen on the streets and I created my own little non-essential oils and called it manhood and thought that's how a relationship was supposed to go.
For me, it's a little bit different. You know, I grew up basically raised by 2 grandmothers. You know, my mother's mother and my father's mother. These were predominantly my parents. And my mother's mother was a Christian person, and my father's mother was more of a street woman. You know, like she can handle herself among men, put it that way. So for me, I saw early by being raised by predominantly just women and women trying to raise a male from childhood, you know, to adulthood, that they themselves had to take on more than just being a woman. When you begin to become a man and you begin to see the same thing, there was a repeating action that women began to take on more responsibility of being a man, so they took on more masculine energy of a man. You're coming into 4 term cycles in life when things are just changing. Just like every decade, you have a different change or a course in time. And you're coming back in a time now where men are a lot of men are naturally beginning to find themselves and beginning to stand up to themselves. The maturity level of men now these days are more clean than it was that when you had the 80 epidemic of crack and then all these things like this. So when you look at it, by the time that we begin to come in contact with a woman, there's an offset. There's an offset even within the man because there has been a lack of the man in his life, but there's just like it was a lack in her life. But there's also been a lack because in Western teaching, it teaches you nothing but masculinity anyway. So it teaches you from a standpoint of where you already are belittle that, or you already lack that. So then where you see it at in our culture, you see it from the woman, you see everything from the woman. So when you look at yourself, you see less of yourself because you first have to learn how to balance the masculinity within yourself and the feminine energy within yourself to be able to help that woman be able to do the same, not to consider something as being toxic, but just seeing something as being off base and offset. It takes 2 to be able to really unite something in a way that it was actually meant to be. The toxicity is on both behalves. because both are imbalanced, and it was set that way.
Got it. Got it. You know, along these lines, and this is a question coming from Carl Berry. Carl, I think this is a really good question. Carl asked, has there been any progress made in destructing mental health stigmas? We know that a lot of people don't go to mental health professionals because there's a lot of stigmas that's surrounding it. So Carl is asking, and are there any solutions starting to emerge?
I mean, just recently you just had Tyrese, who cried out because he was missing his daughter, right? It made the news and everything, but on social media he became a meme. You just had Kanye West have nervous breakdowns on national TV. This man was trying to run for president. He's a billionaire. This is a figure in black culture, right? But he became a joking meme too. You had Will Smith, who just did the same thing with his wife, that she came out openly and cheated, and he embraced it in front of a nation, and he cried and he shed tears. He became a meme too. When you begin to see how we're treated on a social standard, how can you deal with it openly?
Wow.
I think I seen it in the chat earlier. You know, it's about acknowledging it, right? And embracing it. I'm not fond of medication. I am on medication, but I'm real big on therapy. I feel like having someone to talk to is always going to be able to make the difference. Somebody that I can relate to. So I participate in a 12-step fellowship outside of everything that I do in the community for my own recovery, right? And so it's in the preambles, and it talks about sometimes we have to seek a higher level of care, and I'm paraphrasing, psychiatry, religion, things of that nature. And, you know, for years, I just kind of took that as a joke. And here lately, not lately, been a few years now, I just start openly sharing about my mental health, right? You know, I just figured, how do Black men or men of color start to heal from mental health if no one is talking about it? So in a sense, I guess you could say I'm a walking billboard for Black men mental health, and I'm willing to talk about it. And I shared it openly. And so what I thought was going to be a bad day where I openly shared about my mental health and things of that nature actually was a segue and opened the door for several individuals to come up and talk to me more about it in depth. So I'm just a boots on the ground, frontline kind of individual. Like, until we men of color start talking about it more openly and verbalizing it, you know, people won't understand it. I think one of the reasons people made memes of it is because, okay, backtrack. So when I see a person cry, it's instinctive, or I've been taught or programmed to automatically hand that individual some tissue, right? And so it looks like a kind gesture because I'm empathizing with that said individual and their feelings, when actuality, it's really not. Your situation, your tears caused a reaction and some feelings in me that I am not comfortable with. So I'm trying to alter the way that I feel by handing you the tissue, right? And it's the same thing. It's people were uncomfortable with these entertainers or actors or people and placed on a certain level, being real and transparent, and they didn't know how to receive it. It made them feel uncomfortable, so they altered the way they felt by making a joke or a meme about it. But it's a real thing.
Right. Good point. Yeah, I don't want you to think I'm missing your question. I think you have an excellent question that I'd like to save towards the end. I think that's a great question for us to close out about when we talk about what these brothers are doing in the community. I do want to just read a couple of these. Stefan says, let us know it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to cry when you hurt. I think that's important. Before I go to Emmett's question, I just want to read a couple of more. Bob says, wow, I can relate to what you guys are saying about the connection of mental health issues, denial, and social identity. It's like sanity is such a sacred value that to admit mental health issues is so anxiety provoking that we avoid it at all costs. Stefan again says, in addition, what does a young man do when his mother even says, man up? And as men, we've all heard that. I want to go to Emmett's question here. Emmett Hayes says, there are a lot of stereotypical perspectives offered today based on yesterday. For example, he says, mothers raising a son can see him grow into a fine man, but we hear a woman can't raise a son to be a man. I don't subscribe to a lot of the old time beliefs. I'm troubled by men who don't stand for anything. When we look at the attendance of this conference, Emmett points out, men are a no-show by and large. What's your reaction to that? And Emmett, thank you for that question. Great question.
For me, it's understandable. You know, it's acceptable. And you have to be able to accept some things in order to be able to acknowledge something to be able to deal with it, right? For me, I knew my father, but even though that he was an absent figure as a father, I knew my father. My father was a millionaire at one point in his life as a drug dealer. So it cost him a lot of my life away from me. So by the time that I was older and I'm a man, and he's a man, really wasn't a way that he understood how to address me, especially when he began to start going to prison at the age of 17 years old. There became a big block in between that, but it was me who had to begin to understand that if it was something that I wanted, it was something that I had to take upon myself to say that I was bigger than, and I had to be a help in that just as well. It's easier for us to get down on one another and not be able to see one another. And this causes a great block. I have learned that numbers only go from 1 to 9. 1 goes into every number, but none goes into 1. So if I'm acting as though that I want 1, I have to learn to become 1. This is the only way that we can begin to really be able to heal each other, that we can begin to get better and be stronger men. This is something that's something that's not taught, especially when you have a lack of elder men in the community with men that's growing up going through things like that.
Wow.
For me, I lived pretty much everything Emmett just described, right? And what I mean by that is, so I'm currently in, we'll say, negotiations or rebuilding relationships with my sons, right? And so, you know, I stated earlier that I'm a good pretender, and I created my own image of what I thought manhood really was. And so, short version, I ended up being MIA out of my kid's life for like 17 years. Why would you say you did that, Jack? Well, for one, I didn't know how to be a man. Being a father, things of that nature, I had no clue. I had created this false image of manhood, and having feelings and fatherhood was not a part of my little big picture, right? Fast forward 17 years later, you know, really 20 years later, now that me and my sons have discussions, you know, I have to tell my kids I didn't know how to be a dad. And the pressure and expectations of a Black man being a dad and not being able to say, I don't know, it was easier for me to walk away and not have to live up to anybody's expectations. And that was like the hardest question or discussion I've ever had with my kids, but I needed them to know that, because they are all, in the back of their mind, they're always wondering, where did I go and why did I leave them? And so at some point I have to answer that question. And so I had to answer it honestly. I didn't know how to be a father. I didn't know how to be a man. It wasn't that I just wanted to up and just leave them hanging. It was just pressure bust a pipe. I never talked about anything. I didn't have anybody to talk to. And so I'm walking around with all these suppressed and stuffed feelings, which created events where I eventually started self-medicating because I could no longer suppress those things on my own, right? So I needed something to help me to suppress those feelings, right? And every day I felt like a failure. Every day I felt like less than a man. And so I was on vacation courtesy to the state one time, and I came across a book by T.D. Jakes, So You Call Yourself a Man. And I started reading it. And so my perspective or my vision of what a man was started changing. And that's when the healing started for me. I don't know if I answered that question.
No, you did. Thank you. LaShonda Lewis says women are also socialized not to accept the fact that men that cry or appear weak. We say we want men to show emotions, but when they do, our socialized biases creep in and we default to shutting their emotions down. Well said, LaShonda. We get to, so Cynthia asked the question, do real men cheat?
Say that again.
It's exactly what I said. I didn't make it up. Cynthia Brown wants to know, do real men cheat?
Do you eat good?
That's a loaded question.
You know, like, I mean, my question is,
It looks like he's ready to jump on and answer.
I know. I'm starting to think that the answer is yes, because Mr. Emmett down there, he can't stop laughing.
He's ready to jump on and answer.
I mean,
Go
my
ahead,
thing is, I believe that cheating is a part of life. It's just our perception of what we're looking at cheating to be. And it's, you know, so when it's your content on cheating, because if I'm overweight, am I cheating myself in my meals? Am I cheating my health? You see what I'm saying? If I'm realizing
No, I don't see what you're saying, because that is not where I was going.
I think Ms. Brown really wants to know about. Ms. Brown, why don't you ask your question? Ask your question, Ms. Brown.
That was not the question.
What, Ms. Brown, go with your question.
Okay, I'm not talking about food. I'm not talking about other things. I'm talking about men who are running around saying that they're real men and they're in touch with their feelings and they know it all. Mr. Emmett, you're just making me want to laugh. I'm trying not to look at you.
Well, I know I want to get into that so bad.
You know, I'm gonna let you get into it in a minute, because Mr. Train wants to talk about food, but he knows what I'm talking about. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. And so I want to know, you know, how do y'all feel about that? Because a lot of times we just think that you all cheat.
Yeah.
And that is a thing that's inherently in you.
Let's Mr. Mr. Hayes has been dying to jump on this question. Go for it, Mr. Hayes.
I know. See, because
tread
this is
lightly,
really
Mr. Hayes. Tread lightly.
it's conflated into so many different things and so many different areas. But let me go from this perspective. You know, we have our understanding of manhood. And manhood, you know, especially when you have a family and children, and I know that's what Sister Brown is referring to, a married man who cuts out, right? So in the definition of manhood, we have to understand that we are, and we should be, a husband to one wife, right? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to say to you, no. How could we be, with the definitions and the standards that we have set for ourselves as it relates to manhood? It's very difficult to meet those standards. Now, I can flip that question around a little bit, but I won't, because I know I'll be treading in some very difficult water there. But our reality is that we have expectations and understanding of what manhood is. Now, and I'm going to keep it compartmentalized to this married man you're talking about. You see, because
I never said he was married.
yeah. Well, you know what is cheating meant. Well, but see, then that's
You can have a
that's why I
boyfriend.
assume
You can
and I
have a
might not be
single
right.
boyfriend, and you think he's your boyfriend. You think he's your man, and all of a sudden you find out he's some other girl's man too.
Yeah, somebody wrote a song not too long ago about stick a ring on it. You know, so that's why I wasn't gonna go to that other side. You see, because you know, because that's what's gonna get me into the water, and the fire turns up. I am simply saying that once you commit, once you commit to a relationship, that's where you stand. What does a man do? A man stands on his word. This is my belief. You know, we all have our own different standards. A man will need to stand on his word. He needs to be able to tell the truth. He needs to be able to confront his challenges, personal challenges, in a truthful and open way. All right. That makes it very difficult for men to meet this particular standard, because it's pretty easy, even from the beginning, when Adam and Eve, even when God came back and asked Adam, what up? He put it on the woman. You see, so they make it so easy. It makes it easy for men to put those things on women. And I think that's wrong too. Manhood means a lot of things, but the one thing I think it does mean, and I'm believing that's where you're trying to get to, is monogamous relationships. Man, but that doesn't speak to a reality. I'm just telling you what it is that we believe manhood relates to.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. You know, we could go down a rabbit hole with this, and I think Cynthia was trying to take, but Cynthia, in your defense, you did put in quotes real, because I think you wanted to talk about what a real man does. I want to get to this next question, and Jack, I want you to start us off with this. This is from Miss Clarice Withers. What suggestions can you brothers give that can help a Black man that is being released from prison, and he is, I should say, very angry with society and himself? He's come to a family that is I think she says that has fear that he is facing. What's your response to that?
Say that last part again. You kind of broke up on me.
He's coming home to a family where I think he has some fears that he's facing and coming from being incarcerated. So what suggestions can you give to a brother that a Black man that is being released from prison, and he has a lot of anger with himself, with society and himself?
So I know for me, coming home from vacation, courage of the state, I wanted to do everything really fast. I wanted to catch up with everything, or really like pick up where I left off, right? My thing I would suggest is like, take it slow, embrace life right now. Like, embrace your freedom is what I'll say. My own personal experience, of course, my family was like, hey, you need to try to go see a doctor about your mental health, things of that nature. And I really thought they were being funny, right? Communication is key. Or presentation is key for me, so quite naturally, they said it in front of a lot of people, and I was naturally resistant, things of that nature. So if you want to have a real if you want to have a real conversation with me, talk to me on a one-on-one basis. Right? Don't talk to me in front of a crowd, because I'm probably gonna react, right? I'm probably gonna act out because I'm trying to say that little piece of manhood I call myself holding on to. And then on second thing is, I'm available. If he needs someone to talk to, I'm available. Like, reach out to me. The biggest thing I love about peer support is it always comes from a lived experience standpoint. It's not from a book, right? You know what I'm saying? It's not from a book. It's from a lived experience. So I can relate to that a lot faster, and we can build a rapport a lot faster than someone sitting around with a whole bunch of titles and initials behind their name. So that's my comment.
Train, do you want to respond or anything insight you want to share?
I would say, to find support groups, just like with Jack with peer-to-peer, even with me, with POTP, well, where we believe that in really seeding manhood back into the community, so we believe in making men more self-sufficient. And that first thing is about really building up your self-esteem within yourself, despite what you feel your background is. Coming out of prison, you have to understand that while you're in there, you don't have the pressures of the world. So when you come out, you can't take the pressures of the world on. You have to still take out the time to really begin to still do the work on you. And you have to put yourself in a space and a place to be able to do that. Because when you do go back into family settings, sadly, at times they do look for an expectation of you. They are looking for something to see out of you. But you have to begin to do the work on yourself to say, I have to see something first out of myself because it was me in the situation. A lot of times it's easier to go down a mobile field than it is to take a mower and just start on your own.
Can I say something real quick, Dr. Kelly?
Yes, sir.
How do I say this? So when I came home, my life was on a stopwatch, right? I wanted to do everything really, really fast and make things happen really, really fast, right? I had deadlines in my mind, nothing written down, but just all in my mind. And so when those things didn't materialize as fast as I would like, and as fast as my supporting cast would like, the support decreased. So kind of like going back to the question, family support is everything. Outside support is everything. I felt, so when I came home, I didn't have a job for like 7 to 9 months, right? And I was taken care of by several other individuals. My fragile ego reminded me that it made me feel like I was less than a man because I couldn't get a job, or I didn't get the job when I thought I should have got the job. I didn't have a car when I thought I should have a car. I didn't have my own place to stay. I was still living with people when I thought I should have had, I had everything in a time frame. And when those things didn't happen, my morale went down, right? And then the support kind of like dissipated. And so in my opinion, that's why the recidivism rate is so high, because now I think, or I tell myself, let me go back to doing what I know to do, right? When actuality, let me go back to doing what I'm comfortable with doing in order to make myself feel better about myself. So when an individual comes home, the supporting cast, ongoing support is everything. Long-term support is everything, not just for a month, a couple of months, a few days, a couple of weeks, or whatever. Everybody happy to see you, and then all of a sudden you're an afterthought and you're on your own.
Thank you. Ms. Felicia Williams says, we men and women often say we don't have anyone to talk to. We should consider maybe we just don't want to talk to those that are available and accessible. God provides what we need when we need it, to include resources, people to talk to. And she closes by saying, that's real talk. Let's see here. I hope you all are looking in the chat box, because there are a lot of good people are putting resources and things for you to familiarize yourself with. Mr. Hayes put in the chat box, familiar with Winner's Circle Peer Support Network of Texas. Dallas, Tyler, Harris County chapters are the largest. He said, Google them and see the genesis of peer support in Texas. So there are resources being put into the chat box. So please take a look at that information. As a mental health professional, I do want to say, I want to go back to Ms. Felicia Williams' comment and want to get your thoughts on it. Family is great, but for some of these individuals, for some of us that are on this screen right now, family is at the root of some of our issues and challenges. So it's hard for us to turn to family members. And that's the reason why, as a mental health professional, I am a huge advocate of finding someone that you can talk to, someone that is going to listen to you, provide you with unconditional positive regard, and really hear what you have to say. Whether that's a peer support person, but sometimes you just have to find that ear who is going to allow you to present your authentic self with no judgment. And that's what therapy provides. I think for some of us, for men in particular, and for me as a black man, as a therapist, therapy is one of the most intimate things you will ever experience in your life. You are going to be sitting across talking to someone where you're sharing your most intimate thoughts and moments. But you have to know that that information stays right there. It can't be shared. It's not going anywhere. No one is going to disclose it. They're not going to disclose it to your partner, your parents. That information is confidential. And we have got to let our families, our Black men in particular, know. For those of us that are on the screen, most of us were told never to take our secrets, our stories outside of the home. You can call it a generational curse. I call it generational secrets that are being perpetuated and allowed to go from one generation to the next. And we have the power, each and every one of us on the screen, to break that cycle. So that's my little sermon for today. Brothers, what are your thoughts about really and truly getting people connected to resources, whether it's peer support, whether it's therapeutic resources? How do we get men, Black men in particular, connected to those resources to where they are going to sit down and talk to someone and be vulnerable?
So for me, I'm in the community. And that's why I hang out with Train. Train is in the community. We're boots on the ground. If an opportunity presents itself, we're talking to somebody. Young, old, in the middle, it doesn't matter for me. Because I'm a firm believer in what you just shared about, Dr. Kelly. Sometimes just being a listening ear is all that person needed. You know, when I was self-medicating, is what I'll say. I used to pay for people to hang out with me just to listen to me, basically, right? You know, and an intoxicated mind speaks freely. You know, I no longer suppress what I was actually thinking and feeling, and so I would openly share that with other individuals that were self-medicating, and it was a relief, right? And so I think back on that, like, well, if I was paying people today and support groups are free, why am I not sharing about that? Because of stigma, because I was worried about stigma and how people were gonna see me sharing openly about, you know, my abandonment issues or suffering from anxiety and depression and things of that nature, you know. And I think that's a big hang up for men of color, is like, we're worried about what people are going to say at the end of the day. And my rebuttal is that I have to be okay with me. I have to learn how to dance to the beat of my own drum in order for me to heal, right? And sometimes that looks like I'm going to stand alone. And so in the midst of my march, in the community, I come across brothers like Train, right? You know, an eagle sees another eagle. And so we fly together in the community. We do what we got to do.
Thank you. Ms. Gwen Cubbett has a question. Ms. Cubbett.
It's Cubit. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Ms. Cubbett. Thank you.
So, first, let me say, I really appreciate this platform, and to see Black men, you know, just be vulnerable and be open to people asking questions, because that's another thing. Like, I think that society, and then you know, and it goes all the way back to slavery and the way they separated us, and we could really go deep into the conversation, but we seem to think that Black men want something different than most people, and what we almost want to be is loved, right? And so and how we get it is different, but I am one of the things that I learned most in my life has come from my children and my adult children, and so they have taught me how to break those generational curses around kids should be seen, not heard, um, stuff you see in this house better not go out this house. And you know, my son was the first person that ever reached out to me in a mental health crisis after he left the military, and I was able to help him. And so I'm a licensed therapist, and I work for Goodwill. And so the majority of the population that are here are people who are just getting out, people who have disabilities, people who find it hard to find a job based on criminal background. And so I really like that we that I work for those people. But what I'm seeing is that, you know, those same barriers still exist. And so Goodwill was awarded funding through the Central Texas African American Healthy Minds Project. And so one of the things that we pledged to do is to have a peer group of Black people who work for Goodwill, and to bring how trauma impacts mental health and all of that. And so it was so awesome that you guys were here, because I'm in charge of the men's group. And so I would love to get your information and ask for you guys to come and present or be speakers to men that are just recently getting out, that's in the community, that really could, you know, I think it's an assumption that people don't want help with mental health. It's just that we're not asking people. And so I would love it if I could get y'all's information and how to contact y'all in order to ask y'all to come be a speaker at that group.
Wow. Jack and Train, if you can put your information in the chat box, you can also find their information. I read that straight from the booklet that the conference sends out, so that some of their contact information is on there as well. And I see Jack has put his in the chat box. While that's happening, I do want to go back to, I said I was going to go to Ms. Hicks' question, and I want to go back up here to that. These are some really good comments. I hope you all will look at the chat box. There's some really good thoughts. A lot of people are snapping on the comments that you're sharing. And Lisa Quinn asked, where do men find positive, inspiring role models?
Sometimes in front of them. You know, it's like we can't think something is really far-fetched, you know. Just looking at us, none of us know the story in which none of us has been through, but we all has been through something. But the deal is being able to really be able to come into the contact with your own self inside to know what it is you feel outside. And then to begin to gravitate to these things. That's one of the biggest things that we have to be able to do, you know, because we live in a society that's really deemed off of comfortability, and being able to feel comfortable, especially when it comes down to your mental well-being, you know. So you have to really be able to know these things not far-fetched. Sometimes you can be looking so far and you'll miss it because it's right there in front of you. It's just really about you opening your mouth and just saying that I'm hurting, or just saying that something is going on, something is wrong. Today's just not a good day. And you'll hear somebody else say, you know what, it ain't a good day for me neither. But that is an open conversation. Now, can I stay open enough to release these things and begin to possibly develop a friend, or possibly develop someone, you know, that I can lean or turn to? It's never too far-fetched. It's sometimes just right before you.
Well said. Jack?
think Train said it all. I can't follow that.
Okay, all right. Valerie Chamber asks, what is our greatest hope for behavioral health services for Black men? What's been helpful and what's lacking?
Repeat that, Dr. Kelly.
Ms. Chamber asks, what is our greatest hope for behavioral health services for Black men? I'll do this as a two-part question. What is our greatest hope?
I don't, so, okay, I'm probably gonna get shot with arrows with this one, but okay. So behavioral health is a predominantly female-driven field. There's not a lot of brothers in the field. You know what I mean? So how can, I need someone that looks like me to help me, if that makes any sense, right? Sometimes we people of color, this is the shot part, we forget to go back into the community and help people. Once we're licensed, once we're credentialed, right? You know, and granted, you know, there's a lot of hard work, sweat, and blood and tears that goes into that. But, you know, until I go back into the community and help the community, then I can't heal the community. So I feel like behavioral health needs more men in the field, for one, and more people with boots on the ground. Don't forget where you come from.
Thank you.
I believe one of the biggest things is you can't feel like it comes from some sense of placement. Help is help, you know, no matter who it is or where it comes from. Knowledge is knowledge. It doesn't make a difference who it is or where it comes from. Sometimes we hurt our sisters to go there, so they don't go there. You know, some people feel like they have to go to a church or somewhat to meet with a minister or somewhat. They're not religious people, you know, because these things are being placed on tags rather than based on human beings. And when sometimes we can look at ourselves as just being natural human beings, then there's a likeness about us all, and we can now begin to potentially help one another. We can now begin to potentially listen to one another. We can now begin potentially open up to one another, because these things bracket us and places us away from ourselves more than it does places us closer to ourselves.
Well said. You know, her second part of the question was, what's been helpful and what's lacking? As a licensed mental health professional psychologist, I will say, Ms. Valerie, is that I am very hopeful with millennials and Gen Zers. I am seeing them being actively engaged. I am seeing those individuals really pulling their grandparents, their fathers, their uncles, and saying, there are resources out there and available to you. Let's go and talk to someone. They're not just saying, let's go and talk to someone. They're saying, we need to go and talk to someone. That's where I'm very hopeful, and I think that we can get some real traction. I'm seeing partners, wives, girlfriends, who are saying, we need to go and talk to someone. I think if you make this a we problem and not a you problem, that is going to be very helpful for Black men. Because if you're pointing to a Black man and you're saying, you got a problem, you need to go and see someone, even though that may be the truth, we're going to resist. We're going to shut down. But if you say it's our problem, I love you enough to take some ownership and some responsibility, not for the problems that you're creating, but it's impacting me. I'm willing to go and sit with you and hold this space with you if you want me to. But if you simply tell a Black man that he has to go and talk to someone and where to, or don't give him those resources, chances are he's going to hear you, but he may not follow through and go get to the resources that you want to lead him to. Man, this is a great conversation. Now the questions are starting to come in. Let's see here. Good stuff. Yes, Jack, many of the clients say the same. Great feedback. Thank you both for your transparency. Okay, I promised Ms. Heggs, and I want to close it out and give you both an opportunity to answer Ms. Heggs, who put a question up here that I thought was a really good question. Now I just need to find it. Oh, I know what it was. It was some. Okay. Are you guys doing things in the community that are allowing young Black males to express their thoughts and feelings without being ashamed?
I mean, honestly speaking, I haven't created a platform for that yet. That's part of the plan. I'm just trying to navigate my way through what that needs to look like right now. Like a lot of the conversation training I have is, we want to base our program more on attraction rather than promotion, right? And so I always tell them, hey man, how do we make this look sexy? So we're still, on my side of the street, we're still in the building stage, but I would like to be more involved. If you have any resources, I'm open to that as well.
Nice.
But I would say, I mean, I'm honest enough to say no, but I'm also willing to tell you why. With children are delicate, so you deal with them as when those things are actually brought upon you to be able to naturally deal with. But where we stand right now, in order to genuinely and really be able to help children, is to really be able to help our adults, because these children have to go back home to these adults. And if the picture is not right at home, then that small little bit of time, this is what I hear when I started parenting and I knew that I had to raise my kids, outside the house, right? I had to be told that, man, look, those 2 days that you have will never be equivalent to those 5 days that she had every day, all day. So you have to also look at that in the same stages as we are in the stages, and we're trying to help other people, and we're trying to administer to other people and going through transitional phases and actually getting better. You can't start those things with these children, and they're so delicate, and you knowing that they're going to be getting double actions. That's like placing them in wavy water. It's not safe. But I do believe in taking the opportunity and taking the time out and working with our adults, and these children beginning to see adults working with adults, because they have to come over into this situation. And they begin to learn how to be better equipped working people with this, into the adulthood. So I believe that's one of the a better way of handling it, and that's the way that I go about it. But the children, because I do have teenagers, it's something that we do, we do look at, but it's how we actually deal with those things.
Well said. Ms. Kenya, do you have a quick question?
Yeah, yes. Because I work in a school district, and I know it's, like you said, Big Train, it is a contradiction when you are trying to work with kids and they have parents at home that kind of shut you down when you try to speak to them about some of the negative behaviors they have in school, because our African American students are at a disadvantage in schools because they get picked on more, because we are most likely have those low income families. So when I talk to kids, it is because I do jail ministry, and I go to the juvenile justice system and do jail ministry and go in and talk to them. So when they are released and they do have to return back home, at least they have some form of foundation from somebody who spoke positive in their life. Whether you speak to their dad or not, they have something from somebody who actually really cares. Yes, we can talk to adults, but it takes a long time to get to these adults sometimes, because I'm already conformed with my mindset. But if we get to these young boys where they have the opportunity to speak about what's bothering them without that shamefulness, even if they go home to a dad or a mom who doesn't believe in this, they still have somebody who they can reach out to later.
Let me, Dr. Kelly, let me say this for understanding purposes, right? When you look at things from a holistic point of view, you look at things not from a physical point of view. Physical contents, man, even the tags we take on, we say father or mother or uncle or anything like that. But when you look at it without the tags, you realize these are just energies. It's not who the person is. So you have to be able to understand the energies in which you take on, like a father characteristic, a mother characteristic, an uncle's characteristic. These are the characteristics that you have that allows you to be able to deal with these children and be placed around them and be able to actually be a person that can be in a position of a voice, so to speak, right? But also you have to understand, in doing these things, we do have to look at the natural tags that are naturally out here. And just like some of us, even though that we have these programs and things of these nature, we're still working through things just as well because of backgrounds that we have had, but we have found ways to maneuver around these things. But when you're talking about in school settings and all these type of things like that, I say these things because your biggest problem is not naturally with that child. These child do not come to the schoolhouses or go out and they come with the problem and it starts there. These problems already have arrived. These children are already developing strong mindsets at a very young age. And when you begin to say these things, in order to be able to see them or get them to open up, we have to really begin to remove shadows and tags that are faced. Because if I'm taught that a heart looks like this shows that it can be capped off. It can become full when it's still trying to fill up because a heart cannot be capped. And because of that, irritation goes on. And it constantly goes through breaking and breaking and breaking, not understanding that it was just meant to be open. In order for me to be able to feel F-E-E-L, in order to be able to feel F-I-L-L it right. That's for each individual. So I cannot look at where it goes, I gotta look at where it is. And that's in me just as well. Because I possess every last one of these energies.
Well said, Train, well said. Jack, 1 minute, brother. What do you want to say to our amazing people that showed up here today?
Oh man, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the positive comments and quotes. It's look, so just being transparent, I was like a nervous wreck all the way up to to the moment, right? And I just pray about it. It takes a community to heal a community. You know what I mean? We can't do it by ourselves, so it takes all of us. Thank you for like even taking your time to listen to us, or listen to me rather.
Nice, thank you, Jack. Big Train, what do you have to say, sir? Stop laughing over there.
I apologize. No, I'm thankful. I appreciate each and every last person that's on this call, and I thank you, Dr. Kelly, and the rest that even allowed us to be able to come. For me, like this is my first time doing anything like this on this stage of this platform. But I also know the walk that it took to get here. And to be able, for myself, to be able to even see the opening of windows, the opening of doors, from just really beginning to exhale life even better. Because when you begin to let everything inside out of you, you're now beginning to release, a positive wind flow. And this is what we really have to begin to start to allow people to be able to see, is that blocking and holding things in only brings in more blocking. It only brings forward more things to be able to hold in, rather than be able to have more things to let out and talk about, because I don't mind talking about this now.
Thank you,
because this is what it do. So I appreciate each and every last one.
Well said. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank all of you for being here. My challenge to you is this. You have to decide in this fight, as we're talking about Black men and women, especially Black men, are you going to choose to be an ally, or are you going to choose to be an accomplice? I hope you choose to be an accomplice. Choose to be an ally. You get to choose when and if you want to be a part of something. But when you're someone's accomplice, you're their ride or die, and you're in it for them to win it. And if we're really talking about helping Black men and helping them with mental health, you can't be their ally. You've got to be their accomplice. My second challenge to you is, at one point in time, there were 63 people on here. Are we going to choose to make this a moment in time, or are we going to choose to make this a movement? And it's going to take each and every one of us to make and sustain this as a movement. So that's my challenge to you. Thank you all for being here. Thank our panelists, Jack and Big Train. I told you were in for special. These guys are amazing, and they brought it. Thank you all for a wonderful workshop. Thank you all. Have an amazing day and a blessed rest of the week. Take care.
Thank y'all.